Lenin a Black Gemara. We are up to now the eighth Pedic of the Kesuvos Ha'isha Shenofu Lo Chasim. Just to remind you that when we learned all these takanas, trade-offs. She brings something in, and he puts something in the place. So he brings in properties. It's called nichse maloig, the plucked properties. The property in essence is still hers, but the husband works with it, and he gets the produce. And in replacement of that, if she gets taken captive, he has to redeem her. He can't say, "Oh, she has her own money." He has to pay the ransom, and it seems that was unfortunately very commonplace in those days. So we're going to talk about different periods. When did the property become hers? Did it become, and when did she sell it? What about, we're talking about the intervening period between engagement and marriage. If she sold it then, does it also end up with the husband? No, if her husband say, "Hey, the sale is not a valid sale." Also, we're going to see that the husband doesn't really own the property. He only has the paytas. He only has the produce. But then we had a takanas usha. If you remember, we looked a while ago, the usha made takana that if she predeceases him, she sold the property, and she predeceases him, he comes first. He's conceived, even though till now, before Takanas Usha, he only owned the properties, but now he actually gets the property itself if she predeceases him. So that's what the Mishnah talk about, different stages, when she sold it, when did you receive the property, and so on. So let's start the Mishnah of Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. We have a number of arguments here. Number one, Isha Shel Naflu L'Chasim, when did she inherit this estate? Tis Aris, before even her engagement, completely hers. Is Moedim B'Shamer, so there's no dispute. There's no argument at all that she can sell it and the kayim, and the deal and the sale remains extant. It's a valid sale, even if she sold it after the engagement. What about Naflu L'Mishnis Arsim? The property fell into her domain after she got engaged, when there's already a relationship between her husband, but not full, but there's a partial relationship with her and between her and her husband. Beis Shammai says she wants to sell at that time. Timka, the chatchila, she can sell it because the husband's rights do not extend to these properties, even though she inherited after she already had relations with the husband. And Beis Shammai, like Timka, the chatchila, she should not sell because the husband already has some kind of relation. However, the Yevid, she sold it, but gave it away as a gift. It's a valid gift. What is the logic why the chatchila not? Because the husband has relations. So if so, why be the Yevid if she did sell it as a valid sale? The Gemara is going to explain. The Chachamim say, Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yehuda is going to repeat to us a discussion between Shimon ben Gamliel, between Gamliel and the Chachamim, and he has his version. And later in the Gemara bring a Braise, which will bring another Tana's his version of the discussion, which knows there will be two opinions what Rabbi Gamliel actually held. So this is Rabbi Yehuda's view, and goes as follows. Rabbi Yehuda said, Omru Chachamim l'fnei Rabbi Gamliel. Chachamim said to Rabbi Gamliel in this case here, that what? That he sold it, she sells it, while she was engaged. But since the woman, since the husband, once they're engaged, has rights, there's a relationship and rights and obligations to his wife. Why isn't it his? Why is it during that period of engagement she can sell it? And you say, but everyone holds is valid. The husband, what's the difference? He got married, engaged. The husband is there. He has rights. So we're talking about the case where she sold it while they're engaged. Amalehem, answered back to them. Al hachadoshim boishim, the law that says that if she inherited the properties after she got married, the law is if she sold it that it's not a valid sale, and we're embarrassed about it. He says, I don't even agree with it. I have no choice. I don't agree with it. Is it fair? It's her property, and she can't sell it or anything else. Al hachadoshim, that she received after she got married. On the boishim, we're embarrassed, and we said that if she sold it, the husband could come and take it away, which doesn't make sense. Ramula says it's embarrassing because it belongs to her. You want to add another layer and say that even in the stage before she got married, and even if the property entered her before she got married, you want to say that the sale is not valid? No, I disagree. In other words, Ramula says that the sale definitely is valid. B'di Evid, it's a valid sale. Okay, next case in the mission. So that's this. So this case was it came into her possession after she got engaged. Okay, Says the Gemara. Naful, next case. What about Naful Mishanisas? What about if it came into her domain only after she got married? Then everyone agrees. Everyone agrees. That everyone agrees the husband can take it out because since she got it after she got married, it's nichsim maloik, and the husband has rights over it. She shouldn't have sold it, and sold it. It's not a valid sale. Okay, but what happens? The next case number 4. So case number 3 was it came into her possession after she got married and sold it then. Not a sale. Case number 4 is it came into possession it came into her possession before she got married, but she sold it after she got married. In the first part of the Mishnah, she sold it while she was engaged. Now she's selling it after they got married. But when did it come into possession? Before they got married. So Rabbi Gamliel says, he says, Im mochra v'nosna kaim. Rabbi Gamliel says that in this case, it's a valid sale. B'di'evet, it's a valid sale because when did it come into possession? Before the husband had exclusive rights over this. They said to Gamliel, it doesn't make sense. Right now, right now, definitely he's married to her. So therefore, he has all of these entitlements as well as obligations. He's given the chasim, so surely he should also be entitled to only the chasim, and the sale should be a valid sale. Who cares that it entered her possession before she got married? While they were engaged. Even the din when she received inheritance after she got married. And the din is if she sells it, then it's not a valid sale. I'm embarrassed about that because her property, why can't she do whatever she wants? She says, I don't want my husband to have it. Yet we take it away. The same line we had before when we said they were talking about when she sells it while they were engaged. He's using the same line. They sell it after they got married. Even if the din is if she received it while she was engaged and then sold it after they got married, that the Gamul says b'di'evet, it's all right. And the Chacham said no, it should belong to the husband. And he says no, it's bad enough if she inherited it after she got married that the husband can prevent the sale. You wanted to extend it also before she got married. If she inherited, no. Then the Gemara said another opinion. Rab Shimon says it depends. Rab Shimon he argues and he says there's a difference between the chasim and the chasim. Depends what kind of properties we're talking about, and that is as follows. The chasim, how you do the baal, those properties that the husband was aware of when he got married to her, like Timka, she shouldn't sell. The bottle and the sell is not valid because he could say I married her, assuming that these properties are coming into the marriage as well. On that basis, I married her. But if he has no idea about them, the Gemara will explain what doing means. But one opinion is that, let's say, property she had overseas, he had no inkling that they existed. If they were not known to him at the time when the Rosh explained, not known to him at the time when he inherited, not known to him when he sold it, so when she sold it, so therefore she can never say, because if he found out about it after, let's say she inherited, but before they got married, so it had to be that she bought it and even though he got married, he had no idea about it and then sold it. So of course he had no idea. He can never say, oh, I did it assuming that I'm going to get this property. Like Timka, shouldn't sell because after you get married, but the kind of she did it, it's all right. Says the Gemara. Let's first start off the first part of the Mishnah. So we have 4 different cases in the Mishnah. First part of the Mishnah was that she came into her possession before even they got engaged. And then during the engagement, she sold it. The Shammai says, you can sell it, but it says only with the end. That's case that everyone agrees she can sell. It's in case she inherited after they got engaged and sold it and wants to sell it during that engagement period. Bisham says yes, and Basil says only b'di'evet. But if she inherited before she got engaged and sold it during their engagement, everyone agrees she's allowed. What's the difference? Anyway, there's no argument. Why in the next case there is an argument? What's the difference between these 2 cases? Says the Gemara. Rabbi said, Reisha, when did she inherit the property? When she was the sole heir. She was not even engaged, so therefore it's totally hers. So she can sell it even though she's engaged now. Or the Sefer in the second case is talking about when did she inherit it? When she already had relations with her husband. She was already engaged. But it fell into her possession when he already had certain entitlements. Says the Gemara. So if you can acknowledge, that definitely you cannot sell because the husband is right. So why would the evidence is a valid sale? What happened to the husband's rights? Is Kimocha v'nasa my time? So why would the evidence if Basil says if she did it, it's all right? So Gemara explains as follows. Ella Ema say Reisha Vadai B'schus enough. Reisha is no question that she was a sole heir, therefore it's 100% hers. Therefore, even though she got engaged, she can sell it. Sefer, when she inherited, she was already engaged, and now there's a question. There's a vadai that she inherited, a suffix, whether they're going to get married. If they're going to get married, then he has, if this engagement turns into a marriage, that means that from the engagement onwards, he had a right. But if what an engagement falls apart and it doesn't turn into marriage, then he has no rights. So there's a suffix if the husband has rights, a vadai that she has, and if for the chatchili you shouldn't, but the Evid, it's all right. El Reisha Vadai was enough low relative, and the Reisha she inherited before she got engaged. Okay, it's 100% hers. Sefer, in the Sefer when she inherited while she was engaged, Ema we could say bezchusa, Ema bezchusai. You could say it will be hers because the marriage will never eventuate. It could be his that the marriage will eventuate. Therefore, the chatchil let him don't sell it because there's a suffix it might be his. But the Evid sold it all right because the Vadai is hers. Suffix whether it'll ever turn into a marriage. So therefore, the sale is a valid sale. That's the difference between the two. Rabbi Yehuda then continued and said that they said he asked the following question, and we're not sure on which case is he asking the question. He asked the husband has rights, and if the husband has rights, why is a sale a sale? Is the question on the very first case why the chatchili can sell it, or the question is on the sefer on why do we say but the evidence a valid sale? It shouldn't even be according to Basil, it shouldn't be. The question either Bishame why the chatchili can sell it, or the question of Basil, how can you tell me b'di'evid if she inherited while she was engaged and then sold and engaged? B'di'evid it's a valid sale. What about the husband? And the Megillah answers, it's bad enough after she got married, she received the estate, and I'm not happy with the psak that the husband can prevent the sale. You're going to want to extend it to before? Of course not. So he boil who Rabbi Yehuda Allah chatchila, is he asking a question according to Beshami? How can Beshami say the chatchila she inherited while she was engaged and sells it? The chatchila she can. How can you do that since the husband already has certain entitlements? Or is asking a Basil, how can you tell me by the evidence of valid sale? He's arguing about it. Shami for sure is arguing. He's arguing on Basil as well. How can you tell me the evidence of good sale? The husband's rights. Toshma, come in here for the following Bryce. Tanya, we live in the Bryce. Rabbi Yehuda explained, delineate a bit further the discussion. Said Gamliel, Hoyil v'zu ishtai, zu machra bottle, avzu machra bottle. In both cases, it's his wife when he married her. It's his wife. Over here, they're engaged. Also, halachically, it's his wife. So, what happens if she inherited while after she got married, and then she tries to sell it? Everyone agrees it's not a valid sale. Why? Because the husband involved and he has entitlements. So l'chayda avzu, zu machra bottle, and you agree. Everyone agrees that if she inherited after she got married and then she sells it, it's not a valid sale. The husband can cancel the sale. So avzu machra bottle. So even during the engagement period, also the mechida should be bottle. If she inherited while she was engaged and sold it, why is Basil say, but the evidence all right? It should be canceled completely. There's a husband involved. But what do you see from that question, line of reasoning? The question is even on Basil, but even with the evidence, it shouldn't have been a sale. Amalena, you'll answer, that the law that you just invoked, that after she got married, she inherited, and the husband can prevent the sale. We are embarrassed of such a law, even though that's the law. I'm embarrassed about it because really it's her property. Why can't she sell it? And the whole reason is because he's going to pay her ransom. Whatever she says, I don't want you to pay my ransom. She doesn't have that option. We have that option when it comes to wages. We don't have that option to say, oh, I don't want you to pay my ransom here. I don't want you to have my property. We don't have that option. So we're embarrassed about that. You want to add more? You want to say that even when she's engaged? No, that far I'm not going to go. Shmamin is clear from this discussion. The Yebit comes Shmamin is clearly talking about the Yebit. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned, Amar Rab Chanina ben Akavya. We learned Reb Chanina ben Akavi said that in his Bryce, Reb Chanina ben Akavi has another version of what the discussion between Rabbi Gamliel and Chachamim were, which is different than Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda learns Gamliel holds, but the evidence a valid sale. If she inherited properties while she was engaged. Reb Chanina ben Akavi. That was not the discussion at all. What he said about the new and the old. And why is that? Because that's an obvious difference between engagement and marriage. But this is what happened. This is what there's more to the discussion. When they asked him a question, why is it that during the engagement period, but the evidence of valid sale, he didn't say, oh, because after the marriage, it's not a valid sale. We're embarrassed about that. He didn't have to invoke that because there's a very obvious difference between engagement and marriage, and that is as follows. This is what Gamil said first before they jumped to him and asked another question. When somebody is married, then the full entitlements come into effect and the full obligations come into effect. Makes sense. He can prevent the sale. She came by Lozaka. At that time, his entitlements extend to Mitzias, anything she finds, Maisi, their earnings, because he has to provide for it in return. He can annul her vows on his own. That affects him. When it comes to a husband and wife who are engaged, his entitlements are far fewer. He does not have any rights. He doesn't have any rights to anything she finds. Not her earnings. He can't solely annul the vows. It has to be jointly with the father. So therefore, he can't stop the evidence. If she sold it, he can't stop it. What do you ask me a question from the period after they got married to the period when they were engaged? Very different levels. So now came the next question of said, which is very different of Yehuda. So they said to him, okay, Rebbe, what about Mochra? Okay, it makes sense what you're saying. It makes sense. Okay, if she sold it before they got engaged, before they got married, okay, but the evidence of valid sale because he said the husband's rights are very limited. Fine. But what about Mochra? What about Nisas? Let's say she got married. So she inherited while she was engaged, got married, and the achakach mocher, then she sold it. What would you hold the dinners then? In other words, in the case where she inherited it after they got married and then you sold it, everyone agrees you can prevent that sale. But what about in the case where she inherited before she got married, but she didn't sell it till after they got married? What do you hold? That's the din. The din over there is. Amalur said, I hold that she sold and gave it away. It's a valid sale. So this is something in addition which we didn't have in our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we're talking about she sold it while she was engaged. Here we're talking about she inherited while she was engaged, but sold it after they got married. And Gamil goes a step further than Beis Hillel and says that even then, but the evidence of valid sale. Here they already argued. And he said, well, it makes sense. Once they're married, he has full entitlements. Why can't he prevent the sale from happening? What's the chilek if she inherited while she was engaged or she inherited after she was married? In both cases, she's selling it after they got married, and the husband can prevent in that case. Why can't he prevent in this case? Since now he's a full husband, he has all these entitlements and obligations. Surely he should also be involved in the estate, and he should prevent the sale, even if she inherited while they're engaged. He said to them, no. He said to them, even if she inherited after she got married, and the law is that if she tries to sell it, it's not a valid sale, I'm embarrassed with that law. I have no choice because that's what everyone decided, but I'm embarrassed. It doesn't make sense, he says to me. It's her property. How can you tell her what to do with it? Yet we can stop her. So you want me to extend it to the time when she inherited when they were engaged? She inherited when it was really like she was a sole proprietor? No, we're not going to allow that. Not going to allow the husband to prevent it. On this new law about after the marriage she inherited, we're embarrassed. Okay, so therefore, Chanina goes a step further and says that even if she sold it after the marriage, it's all right. Says the Gemara, we learned in our Mishnah that actually nisas, if it happens, it says in our Mishnah clearly, if they before the marriage, before they get married, when nisas get married, the time is valid. Oh, so Chanina is saying furthermore, not only be the evidence of valid sale if she inherited while she was engaged, she can go ahead and sell it. She can sell this is what the Brisa says. She can give it away and the kaim it will exist. So Chanina goes so far to say, go down on a limb, that if she inherited while she was engaged, she can go ahead and sell it, give it away while they're married. So you want to ask, in our Mishnah, it only says b'di'evet. In our Mishnah says, if she inherited ad shalei nisas, and v'nisas, and she got married, Rabbi Gamliel says, b'di'evet, the last case in the Mishnah, Gamliel says, im mochra v'nas l'kaim. If you did it, it's kaim. Not l'chatchila. How do you reconcile the Brisa of the Mishnah? He said, Tni, Yitaka shall learn, Meicheres v'nesenes v'kayim. Change our Mishnah around and say, edit it and say, L'chatchila, Rabbi Gamliel holds if you inherited before you got married, you can go ahead and sell it. Teisha has a problem with that because where do you find that you edit a Mishnah to conform with a Brisa? Usually you edit a Brisa to conform with a Mishnah. Anyway, Rav Papa says, like kasha. You're asking a question from the mission of the Bryce. It's two authorities. Who's talking in the Bryce? Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yehuda. Our mission is Rabbi Yehuda's version of Gamliel, who holds that only by the Eved if he sold it after get married is a valid sale. But Chatchila you can't. And Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia. The Bryce, remember, it's Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia, and he holds according to Gamliel the Chatchila. If she inherited while she was engaged, the Chatchila you can sell it after you're married. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia. Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia. Kibbei Shammai. Something doesn't make sense. Beis Hillel holds that even if she sells it while they're engaged, it's only b'di'evet. Beis Shammai says lechatchila. Comes along Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia and says that Rabbi Gamliel holds that even after they got married, she can sell those properties she inherited earlier on lechatchila. She can sell. That follows Beis Shammai and takes Beis Shammai further. How could it be Rabbi Gamliel should follow Beis Shammai and not Beis Hillel, who says that even if she sells it while she was engaged, it's only b'di'evet? So they want to ask, Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia Beis Shammai, you follow Beis Shammai. So you want to hachakama. This is what Rabbi Chanina ben Akavia is saying. Loi nechel Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. That was that you're wrong. There is no argument of Beis Hillel Beis Shammai in this thing. Beis Hillel for sure holds if she sells it while she's engaged, lechatchila you can sell it. Rabbi Gamliel goes a step further, and he says that even after she got married, if she inherited earlier on, she can go ahead and sell lechatchila. Says he about further. So halach Rabbi Shmuel and Tavaya, both Rab and Shmuel both say whether she inherited before even she got engaged. Whether she inherited after she got engaged. But Vinisas, if we're not talking about during the period of engagement, but now she got married, in all of these cases, the husband can prevent the marriage. Not only the chatchila, but even b'di'evet, he can prevent the marriage. Which sounds like nobody. Come on, the loika Rabbi Yehuda. This does not sound like Rabbi Yehuda says that only b'di'evet, that b'di'evet it's a valid sale. The loika of Chanina Kavi, the chatchila you can sell it. Come along, Rabbi Shmuel says not only the chatchila she can't sell it after the marriage, even b'di'evet it's not a valid marriage, not a valid sale. Who holds that? Who not Rabbi Gamliel's and Rabbi Yehuda's version who says b'di'evet it's a valid sale, and not the Rabbi Gamliel and Chanina Kavi's version holds the chatchila she can sell. You're right, because there's a third opinion there. Inu Damri, Rabbi Shmuel both follow Rabbi Seinu. There's a third opinion, the rabbis. This is only a lone opinion of Gamliel, and they're arguing what Gamliel holds. But there's a third opinion, the rabbis. And the Tanya, we learned, Rabbi Seinu, Chazer v'Nimner, the Rabbanan, after this argument, sat down and reconsidered, and they counted up to see whether they have the numbers, and they decided as follows. They determined, Bein Shenafula Atchalek Sadas, whether she inherited before the engagement. Bein Shenafula Mishnisas, or after the engagement. Then Nisas, and then she got married. So now we're talking about during the married period when all the property she brought in on Nichse Maloi, pluck properties that the husband has the Paris, the produce, not the actual property. Habal Maitzi Miyadakuchis, the husband can prevent the marriage, and therefore that's the opinion that we follow. Says the Gemara, Nisas, but once they got married, everyone agrees that it's not a sale. Says no, if she inherited properties once she got married and then she sells them, everyone agrees it's not a valid sale at all. Lema, let me ask you a question. We learned that was the institution of Usha that made a number of takanas, and one of them is that the wife sells the property after the marriage, the husband can step in and take the property away. If she dies, he can come in and take the whole property away. So Usha happened many years later. What are you telling us that Usha made a special takana when it's a din in the Mishnah? It's a clear din. Usha, what? That they're coming to tell us the din which Usha told us the same takana. But Usha is kina in Usha. They've established a number of takanas, and one of them was that that if a woman sells these properties of the husband, that if a woman sells the property that she brought into the marriage, as long as the husband's alive, and then when she dies, the husband can go ahead. The husband can go ahead and take from the lekuchas the properties. Argument while the wife is alive and she sold it, who ends up with the produce? The buyers. Or does that also go to the husband because his right is to the produce? Anyhow, the Gemara says, no, you're mixing up. Masnis and our mission is focusing on B'chayeya. Our mission is talking about when she's alive. And only right is will pay this. And the mission is telling you that no, that he is entitled to take all the produce because that's his right. He doesn't have any rights on the property. So the wife sold the property to sale at the moment while she's alive. But the produce, which is his right, she couldn't sell. So he gets it. Takonas Usha, Usha came along, what did they add? Begufashal karka. They came along, they added that the property itself, if she predeceases her husband, the property itself goes to the husband. If the husband predeceases her, then the sale is a valid sale. It doesn't go to his heirs, it remains in Lekech. But if she predeceases her husband, then the husband takes the property away. And that was the Usha, what added to our Mishnah. After the death. Okay, Rav Shimon makes a distinction, but it depends what kind of properties we're talking about, if he can prevent the sale or not. Says again, no, certain properties of the sale will be a valid sale if she sold it after they got married. Certain properties it won't be a valid sale. What's going on here? What's considered properties, knowledgeable properties, and the properties you're not aware of? So Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Chanina wants to say, Yeduyin is kakoi. Everybody knows land and real estate and who it belongs to. She'en Yeduyin metaltlin. But properties that we don't know is metaltlin. And metaltlin, people don't keep a record of who owns what. But karka, house, the property, everyone is aware who the owner is. So therefore, if he knew about it, if it's karka, he can say, I married you thinking that I'm going to get these karka. So therefore, the sale was not a sale. Because it's like a condition, an unwritten condition. But Rabbi Yechina says, no, are you doing it? Even metaltlin, he's aware of, and he can claim, I thought that you're going to have this car, and that's why I married you. But the you know what ain't doing is? Kosher Yesheves Khan, she lives here. The Naflulon, the Chasim in and assets fell into her possession overseas, and he wasn't aware. And when they got married, he wasn't aware. And according to the Shainim, even when he made the sale, he wasn't aware until after the sale. Because if he was aware before the sale, then maybe he should be able to prevent it. Just like we learned before, during the marriage, she was hurt by somebody, and there's shame and there's pagam. We said the money goes to him. Why does the money go to him? This money came in afterwards. So we say that if he's aware of it before the sale, he still has rights. It's only if he wasn't aware of anything until after she sold it, then he found out, hey, she had a property over there, and she sold it and made a fortune. Then he has no rights. We learned, she lives here, and the property fell to her from overseas. Okay, let's continue. Now, there's a concept called a shtar mavrachas. We had a concept called a shtar pasim, where somebody would write a interesting shtar. Let's say you wanted to get a loan for the bank, so you wanted to show the bank that you're strong. So you were a bit conniving here. So what you did was you went to somebody and said, "Do me a favor, write me a shtar pasim." Write me a shtar that you owe me $1,000, and I'll never collect on it. But if the people see that, I'm a type of person that can lend $1,000 and so on and so forth, I'll get the loans, the credit that I want. And people will think of me better. That's called a shtar passing. And then, and in the Gemara we learned that it's not a good idea to have these things lying around, because you're asking for trouble. You don't really want the shtar to be acted on, but you're sort of putting a stumbling block right there because you have a shtar you wrote that you don't really want. And we have a thing called a shtar mavrachas. A shtar mavrachas, very interesting, is, excuse me, let's say I want to borrow $1,000, and the law is that automatically there's a lien on all my properties. So I turn around to a good friend of mine I trust, and I said, I'm selling you all my properties. I want to be destitute. I don't have any land. So when I get this loan, there's nowhere for the lien to fall on. And you hold the properties in your name. And if I cannot pay my lender, he has nowhere to turn. And then when I'm ready, I'll take the properties back. It's called a shtar mavrachas. I wrote a shtar in order to avoid something. Same with taxes. I put the shtar in the kid's name, my wife's name, and even though I own, let's say, 50%, I put them all the different things so that I don't, or people want to sue me, they cannot go to my house because my house is not even my name. My business goes under. They can't touch the house. That's called a shtar mavrachas. The question is it a genuine shtar or not? In other words, can the person on the receiving end, your wife, if the chas v'shalom things break up, she says, well, the house is mine. It's going to split. You gave it to me. Look, I have you put the house in my name. Or the case of the lender, the buyer says, well, you sold it to me. I don't care. I have a shtar document with Adim and everything else. That's called a shtar mavrachas. So what happens in this case? Let's say we fall afoul of each other. We're no longer friends. And now you're saying, too bad, I'm keeping the properties. I have a contract right here. Unfortunately, many did Torah this way, where a father would write most of the estate to one of his sons to avoid taxes or whatever. And then when it comes to an inheritance, that son says, it's all mine. It's not part of the Yerusha, and give it all to me. And therefore, what happens then? Many din Torahs revolved around that. It's called a Shtam Brachas. So the Gemara says like this: Hayitza, there was a woman, the boy, the Tavrinul and the Tavrichinul and the Chson Megavra. She didn't want a husband to end up with the whole properties, so she, before she got married, wrote away all the properties. Kasrina, who she wrote to her daughter, wrote it to her daughter and said, all these properties belong to you, so they don't go into the marriage. He doesn't get nichse malay, nothing. Anyway, and according to Rashi, which all the Shem have difficulties with, Rashi said she actually told the two witnesses that you should know that we're writing this document, but I want you to know I'm not doing it generally. It's not a genuine sale. I'm just doing this to avoid my husband getting his hands on my properties. And all the Shem have a problem with that. And why even have a discussion? If she told witnesses that's the story, then there's nothing to discuss. Then of course the daughter can't claim later, oh, it was a valid sale. Hey, she told the witnesses that's not a valid sale. So therefore, the many Rishonim say that Rashi, they argue with Rashi, but those who want to say that actually we have to edit Rashi and change what Rashi said. Instead of saying that he told witnesses, saying that she did not tell witnesses. That's what some want to say. Others have a problem. What does it help telling witnesses? Because that's oral versus a contract. You have a contract with witnesses signed that there's a sale here, and orally you say it's not a sale. How can oral break a contract? For that, the Haggadah Erzurua answers that because she told them at the time of the writing the shtar. Once you have a document and tomorrow you say something to somebody, it's meaningless. But because you told the witnesses at the time of the writing the shtar, this is not a genuine shtar. This is only there to avoid my husband getting his hands on it, to prevent him from getting his hands on it. That is not considered words breaking your shtar, and that is considered valid. But let's see what happened there. That's what you did to the daughter. Intimate, she got married, and sure enough, got divorced. So now she wants her properties back. Also, Nachman, and the daughter didn't want to give back to her. Her daughter said, hey, there was a sale, they're all mine. Also, the Kamed Rav Nachman came, they had his dinner Rav Nachman. Nachman took the shtar that this woman wrote to her daughter and ripped it up and says to the daughter, you have nothing, there's no valid sale, give it all back to your mother. Also, Ravona went to Kamed Marukva. Ravona went before Marukva. And Marukva then was Av Bezin, even though we had another Gemara of Nachman was much greater than Marukva, but Marukva was Av Bezin. We'll see some headings on. Amalei Chazi Mar Nachman Chakla. Did you see what Nachman did? He's like a farmer, like a puyer. He doesn't know halachas. Well, he just ripped up a shtar. There were witnesses signed it. Everything was documented correctly, and he just ripped it up. Took it away from the daughter. How can you rip up somebody's document? Amalei said, Marukva says, that's very suspicious. Rach was unbelievable. Emily, tell me, easy, my friend, or tell me how. Tell me what happened. Amalei, how? We told him over the whole story. Amalei, Shtam Avrachas, come on. This is talking about the Shtam Avrachas, Shtar we trying to escape. Hachi Amar Rab Chaniloi Bar Idi Amar Shmuel. This is what Rab Chaniloi, the son of Idi, said name of Shmuel. Moira Harani. Shmuel said, I was given license to be a dayan. You need permission to be a dayan in Bavel. You need it from the house of David, and I got it. And I'll tell you right now, one of the laws that I place in my bezin, if ever comes to me a situation of a shtar mavrachas, and I'll rip up a shtar because it's not a genuine shtar. I fully understand what happened. All the other Rishonim say that she did not tell the witnesses, but it's obvious from the story what her purpose was, what intent was. That she just tried to do it to prevent. And the best proof is they even got divorced. I mean, she was already suspicious from the beginning that it might not work out this marriage. So therefore, she gave it away. She, to hide. She hid her assets. That's basically what she was doing. She was hiding her assets. I don't understand. I understand the reason why Shtar Mavrachas is meaningless. Suddenly you're giving away your properties to a stranger, to a third party. Who gives away the properties to a third party? Nobody says, you know what, I'm going to give up all my money. I'll give it to a friend, or the Yoel give somebody else. It doesn't make sense. That's obvious. That alone is obvious. Tells us that you were just trying to hide your assets. To somebody else. Why can't it be that a parent wants to give their children their house? It's a very nice gesture. And we had the Gemara before already. People would give their home to their children with a life tendency. And then we had a situation where the Yavamas, where they didn't give life tendency and they had to pay They couldn't just move in. Because people did give, sometimes he gave out Yerusha before he's still alive. So maybe the mother genuinely wanted to give it to the daughter. Now she had to change her heart. Why do you automatically assume that it's that was what do you call it? There was a star brachas? And this is the problem they have with Rashi. What do you mean? What's Rabbi's question? Why you assume? She told it to witnesses. That's why they want to learn in Rashi that she never told witnesses. Anyway, so the Rav says no. Even your own daughter, the makam bart nafsha difla, you always come first. Even your own daughter, you might let them live in the house for free, and so on and so forth, but give it to them when you have nowhere else to live. It doesn't make sense. Nobody gives anybody anything before they give themselves. That's the assumption we make. Okay, Mitchell has a question. Someone wants to hide her assets. The woman wants to hide her assets from her husband. Kate said, what should she do? Kesuvos Daf pasim la'achedim. She writes the shtar pasim to others. Pasim means to appease, to convince. She's saying to them, do me a favor. I want to hide my assets. I'm going to say that all these properties belong to you. I'm gifting it to you, but it's only there, while I have to hide it from my husband. I get divorced, or if he dies, just give it back to me. I no longer have to hide it from my husband. So the Gemara, she never intended that they should have it. That's the best advice I give you, how to hide your assets. The Chachamim say a shtar pasim doesn't do it. They say the person that you gifted all of your assets to, if that person, let's say, gets into a fight with you, she could turn around and laugh and mock you and say that no, that I'm keeping it. You gave it to me. I have a document here, and here, go prove it. But so, what's the best remedy? What's the best way to hide your assets? This is what you do. You gift all your properties, and you write, these properties will belong to you from today. And later on, if I agree. In other words, right now I'm writing it to you, but the condition is that I have to agree later on. So if the husband comes along and says, I found out you have these properties, so I want it because they belong to me, she turns around to the guy and says, you can have it. And then the husband no longer has any rights to it because it belongs to that person. If the husband never comes along, but this guy says, the properties are mine, she says, I never said you can have it. A little bit, the Acharayim have a problem understanding the Gemara. What happened? The husband says, give me the property. And she says, no, it's that guy's. And so therefore automatically belongs to that guy. She lost the properties. Well, why is this a good way? Why is this good advice in hiding your assets? She can lose everything. So the reason is because she wrote this condition. But she didn't write it. The lekech ends up buying it. So what are you telling me that you can do this whole thing here about a shtar brachas? It's clearly here, shtar brachas doesn't work. You have to make this condition, otherwise, just to hide assets and you say, I'm giving this to you, and it's not a genuine shtar, it doesn't work. We monitor her movements. If you give some of your assets away and you can retain some for yourself, then we can say it's quite genuine. Why can't it be you're gifting somebody some assets and you have enough to live on, you keep some for yourself. So therefore we say the only way to use it to hide your assets is you make this condition. But if she's giving away all of assets, like the case of a daughter, she gave every single property. She doesn't want her husband to get hands on any property. Gave it all away. Nobody gives away all the property. It's clear from that alone that she only did it to hide her assets. I said, more, that's a very simple question. If she gives away all the properties to her daughter, and we say it's obviously not a proper shtar because it's a shtar mavrachas, so how does that help her? So the husband says, give me the properties. You gave it to your daughter. They're not your daughter. It's clear. It's only a trick. You're only trying to hide your assets. If I die, the husband says to the wife, and you outlive me, you'll just take the properties back because there's never a sale. So if there's never a sale, you own the properties. And if you own the properties, then I own the properties. So what do we gain? So says the like kaninu, and if the daughter, let's say, is not acquiring it, is lekeyach, the buyer, and the baal, then goes back to the husband. Amar Abaye says the reason why it works by a wife is asum kenechasim she'en yedun lebal. We treat it as a property that the husband was not aware of. What did we learn before about a husband? That he said, I married you, relying, I'm going to get these properties. Since at the time, these properties were all sold to your daughter, so you didn't think at the time that it was just to hide your assets. You thought it was a proper sale. And maybe later on you realized differently. So at the time of the marriage, these properties were not around. They belonged to the daughter, they're her name. or somebody else's name, and therefore when you married her, you did not rely on those properties. But Liba de Rav Shimon, who says, and therefore many parts of Rav Shimon, and therefore when it comes to these properties, it doesn't matter, it doesn't belong to the daughter, but the husband cannot say, I married you thinking that I'm going to have these properties. You never knew about these properties, or you knew about them, but you thought it belongs to her. And therefore, she says, you have no rights over these properties. As a result of this, came along big machlekes of shayim. We'll just say one. Rabbeinu Tam says, what happens in the case of a borrower and a lender? So the borrower goes ahead, takes all of his properties, and puts it in someone else's name. And so in order to avoid that, there should be a lien on his properties. And the same thing is by Kesuvos. He wants that his wife shouldn't collect the Kesuvos from his property. He wants to give it over to his children. So he hides those properties and puts on somebody else, on one of the other wives' name, or whatever, somebody else's name, or one of his children's names, other children's names, to avoid having property. And it's called a shtar mavrachas. So our Gemara here says shtar mavrachas works. Would it work in those cases as well? So Rabbeinu Tam says no. It will be a valid shtar, and the buyer or whoever's name is under can keep it all. Why? Because over here we had to use the logic that the husband did not rely on these properties, and therefore, even though definitely the intention was not to be genuine, but the husband wasn't aware, wasn't relying on these properties, therefore he can't collect it. But in these stories about the lender or with the Kesuvos, then over there, if let's say if the shtar is not genuine, right? It's only to hide the assets, then really belong to you. If it really belonged to you, then really there's a lien. It doesn't matter whether the lender knew about it or not. There's no law that says the lender has to know about every single property when he makes a loan. Whatever properties you own at the time, there's a lien on them, whether he knew about it or not. So what does it help? A shtar mavrach, as the Rabbeinu Tam says. A shtar mavrach means it's not a genuine shtar. If it's not a genuine shtar, it really still belongs to me. I'm just hiding it. You should know about it, but it really belongs to me. Like a tax department finds all of these places, in the Bahamas or other places, Virgin Islands, but they're yours, and therefore it doesn't matter if you hid them. It doesn't make it no longer yours. So here it's still yours. If it's yours, then there's a lien on the property. When she has a Kesuvos, there's a lien on these properties. So shtar mavrachas doesn't help. It only helps in the case of a husband and wife, where over there he had to know about it when he got married. Because he didn't know about it, he cannot say, "Oh, I relied on those properties when I got married." Tomorrow, Mitzvah.